Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to the Falcoholic Live's Falcons vs. Steelers Week 13 post-game show. I'm your host, Kevin, not at Falcoholic Kevin, joined by my co-host. He's Alan Strk, joining us once again after the Thanksgiving break at Alan Strk on the Twitters. Alan, how are we doing today?
Just trying to process everything. I'm looking forward to watching other football because it's actually a really good slate of games, but nonetheless, we have to do our due diligence to our loyal listeners. We have to cover this game and thankfully look towards the future because that's what the Falcons should be doing at this point.
Yep, and before we get into the game, which of course the Falcons did lose, okay, I gotta get to this in a second too. The Falcons did lose 19-16 in what was a pretty uninspiring game, pretty difficult watch. And we'll get to that, but I do want to quickly get out this quote from Arthur Smith. Jeff Solch just tweeted out 6 seconds ago. Arthur Smith, quote, "Everything is on the table going into the bye week" when asked about a potential change at quarterback. So, folks, I believe that that's pretty much, I think, an indication that we will be seeing Desmond Ritter after the bye. But not official, but that's going to be one of our topics, of course, tonight, talking about Desmond Ritter. And I don't want to sound too gleeful because I don't want it to seem like we're celebrating Marcus Mariota's downfall or anything like that. Alan and I are on record as liking Mariota. I mean, I was a big fan of him at training camp. I thought he was playing really well. I was hopeful that he would outperform expectations, and I think there's a case to be made that he really did. I mean, he held on to this job up until week 10 without, I think, too many questions. I think that Thursday night football game against the Panthers was when things really turned to being, I think, a majority of fans sort of against what the Falcons were doing at quarterback. But tough week, tough game. Alan, where do you want to start with this one?
Oof, because we could look at both sides of the lawsuit. The whole discussion's about Mario, but everyone's praised it.
The defense was really hard to watch.
Yeah,
but
they only allowed 19
points. Yeah.
But I'm just like, okay, that's not really an accomplishment against last week Taylor Heineke and now Kenny Pickett. Like, these are two very limited offenses with quarterbacks that are not particularly accurate with the ball, that don't really see the field all that well. It's just both quarterbacks are kind of just like taking it down by down to seeing what's there. Like, they're just like throwing it up. It's a lot of just unpredictability. But credit Kenny Pickett. I thought he played a pretty controlled game, all things considered. But it's like, look, we know these offenses are below average, so I don't know what the whole talk is when it comes to, like, oh, they kept them to points. Like, okay, they made a couple of third down stops here and there. AJ Terrell, what a phenomenal play he made. Deontay Johnson, who clearly pushed off. I don't know what the referees didn't see there. But besides that, like, I can't think of any significant moments from the defense. They had a couple of hits here and there. Lorenzo Carr, I thought, flashed a bit in the first half. But, like, what other standouts were? Like, to me, when I look back at the defensive performance, I just think of missed tackles. Probably Richie Grant's worst game of the year. Not a lot of pass rush. Like, I don't know what to take out of this for positive defensively.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really tough watch on defense. Like, the tackling was so bad. Like, it's just, man, just so many missed. I mean, I would think there had to be 10 missed tackles at least in this game, which is just a really abysmal number.
Yeah.
I mean, the Steelers must have been averaging like 5, 6, 7 yards after contact in this game. I mean, it was pathetic. Like, they were just, bad form, going high on Najee Harris. Like, I don't know who the hell would ever coach that. That dude is the size of Derrick Henry almost. Like, and you're going high on this guy every single tech. Yeah. It was really frustrating to watch. On the same token, it's like they also held them to 4 field goals on a day that could have been a lot worse. And we know that this defense, like, talent-wise, is just a disaster, even more so than the beginning of the year, considering they're down so many players in the defensive line. The best player on the defensive line is Arnold Ebiketie. He wasn't even in there. And it's a disaster, obviously, but I feel like this defense, if they hold any offense to under 20 points, that's just a giant win, and you just take it. Like, you take it with this team. Because we saw under Dan Quinn those last few years, it did not matter who they were playing. It could have been the worst offense in the league, and they were giving up 25, 30 points, no questions asked. So, like, it was a very difficult watch. I will not praise the defense's play in this one as good. It was not, but considering the context and the fact that the Steelers had their 3 best offensive games of the season over the past 3 games, holding them to 19, I think, is an absolute win in the context of what we should expect from this defense. So I don't want to, like, dog them out, I guess, for this, but I don't think they're really deserving of too much praise either. I mean, I think this is sort of what you would hope for from a below average defense against just the Steelers offense, which is not great, even though they've had some better games lately.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very accurate assessment. I think you broke it down very nicely. So I mentioned when it comes to tackling high, like I can understand when things are chaotic in between the tackles, you kind of lose form of your technique just because you're moving at 100 miles per hour. But like in space, whether it was Richie Grant, Michael Walker, Rashaan Evans, who in particular was on the outside with him, I think they just threw a quick pass, and like Evans was perfectly there. He could have just went low. Like all these players just went high at Najee Harris each time, and Richie Grant got put on a highlight reel. Rashaan Evans whipped. Michael Walker probably had the worst whip out of them all. Like it was just embarrassing. Like these are players that reliable starters. DMPs wants to take to that. Like these guys are playing every down, and it's just like you can't make standard plays like that. And it's just like what Najee Harris does. He's not having a great year, but Najee Harris runs with a lot of power. So it just didn't make any sense. And like it was just ugly. And then how about the Freiermuth big play?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many missed tackles were on that one? Yeah. I mean, 4 at least on that play. So
Terrell, Hawkins, Anderson looked stiff. It's just moments like that. Cause like, look, Pittsburgh has they got talent, clearly. I know Pickens was quiet all game, and I know Deontay Johnson's probably the most frustrating receiver to watch, but Deontay Johnson after catch is a problem. And we know what Najee could do in the open field. So it's just,
yeah.
Like they're gonna do
prepared.
Things, but it's just like you expect better technique, and just being more prepared is just like come on. So that's kind of where the frustration lies.
Yeah, and like Freiermuth was their leading receiver going into this game. I think he had more yards than either Deontay Johnson or George Pickens. Wow. And I'm kind of shocked that Pickens didn't have a big game, like considering that the Falcons defense has been notorious for giving up big passing plays, and they basically shut him down entirely. And I don't think they really did a bad job with Deontay Johnson either. It was just like, I thought the coverage was fine, except for that Connor Hayward touchdown where they just completely busted the coverage on that one.
That was 100% Richie Grant too.
Yeah. Like at this point, my expectations are low for the secondary, but I thought the coverage overall was okay. It was just the tackling. Like if they just made the tackles when they made first contact, like they would have shut down this offense, probably limited them to a handful of scores, because there were so many opportunities for them to get tackles for loss in the run game or get tackles for 2 or 3 yards in the run game. And it was just them turning these plays that should have been stuffed up into 6-7 yard gains and more. I mean, it's bad. It's real bad. I do want to get to something real quick before we keep going. Letting everyone know, I haven't made the graphic yet, but we are officially starting our Senior Bowl fundraiser this month. So donations this month are going to go towards travel for the Senior Bowl, which I'm very excited about. I wanted to let people know that before they started donating in earnest. But we do appreciate all that. Obviously, that helps cover the travel for me to get down there. And I invited Alan, but he's too busy. So he's got his high-powered job.
Sorry, folks. Man. Yeah. Look, you're in great hands with Kevin, folks. That's the content machine right there, and I'm sure you're gonna make a lot of connections down there. I can say down there, right? We consider Mobile, Alabama to be down there.
It is down there, for sure.
Right.
It's south of Atlanta, and it's definitely south of us in New York. So I think it's definitely fair to say down there on that one. But
I should know my geography better, but I still want to aggravate our listeners, given that majority of them are coming from Atlanta. So
that's definitely south of Atlanta. So I think that's fair. But yeah, guys, we appreciate it. All donations and tips this month are going to go towards the Senior Bowl travel. Trying to raise about $500 again this year. That was extremely helpful last year in making it so I didn't have to pay much out of pocket for that trip at all. And again, super appreciative of you guys. You've helped me get to Senior Bowl last year and training camp this year. I mean, it blows me away, the support. So I just really want to thank you guys and just get that out there. Trying to start a little bit earlier this year, because last year I had to go into debt to myself a little bit to pay for the flight, because I had to make that at the end of December. So that's the planning, was starting it in December this year. So just want to be, transparent about that. So thanks, guys. And also shout out to everyone on YouTube. 5,000 subscribers this week. We finally reached that mark. So big mark there. Appreciate everyone for subscribing. And this is another opportunity. If you haven't done so yet, you can like and subscribe as well and help us out there. And we really appreciate that, guys. It's been a long road. I think I took over the channel when we had like 800 subscribers, and in the past like 3 or 4 years, it's been all the way up to 5,000. So really appreciate that. Thank you guys. Back to the game, back to that hashtag content. We did have a donation just come in, so let me get to that, and then we'll go back into the game because I don't want to.
Yeah, because I got a good question for you.
Yeah. Okay, so we got Solaire, aka Guy Fieri, with the $1. What's up, man? He says, "Well, that's it. It's over in terms of the playoffs. But the great news of this is now we get the weekly draft takes. I know you're excited about that, Solaire." He says it's time for Arthur Smith to see what we have and go ahead and start Felipe Franks at quarterback. Oh, never mind. I guess we could start Ritter. That's fine. Can't wait for more mock drafts. Yes, Solaire, we will have more mock drafts coming. Don't worry about that. Plenty of draft content coming.
Felipe Franks, another penalty. He doesn't play much, but when he gets on the field, the yellow laundry comes out.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Felipe Franks this season. Maybe this is just not his year. Maybe just not his season. But thanks, Solaire. And then we got Gary Stafford with the $10. Thank you, Gary. He says, this was never going to be our year. Let's now get an early start on maximizing 2023. Yeah, Gary, appreciate the donation and agree with you. Like, I think this is now, I don't have a problem with them trying to maximize this year and make the playoffs. Like we talked about it last week, that playing important games in December, we only got to play one, like a game that mattered potentially for the playoffs this year. But it was still important. It's important to get that experience and to get this team experience playing meaningful games late in the season. I guess you could argue how meaningful this one was, but I think it made sense for them to try to make the playoffs if they could. I would never condone just like tanking your way out of the playoffs if you're that close. And we all know it's because the division's terrible, but whatever. I mean, you can't control that. At 5-8, you need to pack it in. Like it's. You're already now you're a game and a half behind the Bucs, even if they don't. I guess you're still only a half game if they lose, but even if the Bucs lose, the Saints are now going to be tied with you, and of course the Panthers are just a game behind you as well. So like you're no longer this clear second team in the NFC South where you just waltz in if the Bucs falter. Now you got to contend with all these other teams, and I think it's sort of time to turn the page, and we'll talk about that more today as well. George Costanza says, "Yay! Now I have to open my checkbook again to fly Kevin on vacation." Vacation, George. This is work. I don't know how many people vacation in Mobile. I don't know that that's a popular vacation spot. I guess maybe like Orange Beach or something is close to Mobile. But
listeners, you want exclusive content, you want the inside details, you want actual scouting. Like this is work right here.
I know you guys need those clips. The clips, you guys are thirsty for those clips. I still have people retweeting that Travis Jones versus Cole Strange clip, even today. So Cole and Travis Jones whooped him. So,
yeah. But why is that? Because the Patriots aren't playing. They play Thursday.
I know. I feel like every couple of days someone retweets that clip. I just never know why, but someone's like bringing it up in some argument somewhere, I imagine. Or maybe they're making fun of the Patriots for taking Cole Strange, who's been benched, I believe, now. I'm not exactly sure, but...
I'll check, man. What are we doing?
Yeah. What are we doing? All right. We did have just one more donation come in, so I'll get to that real quick. If you guys have more, feel free to get them in. We'll get to more here in just a second. Corey with the $5. Thank you, Corey. He says, "Can you say that you have faith in Arthur Smith to make the right personnel decisions? I think Ritter should have played after the Panthers game, and Anderson should have been starting a long time ago. London voiced his displeasure last week and got the ball today." I don't really think their personnel decisions have been that questionable. I mean, I think we wanted Ritter to play earlier, and I think you could certainly make the case, especially if Ritter comes in and plays like amazing, that could have potentially launched them into the playoffs if Ritter came in and was a big upgrade. But at this point, I'm not willing to bury Smith for that. And then on the defensive side, I think Arthur Smith is giving Dean Pease quite a bit of leeway to sort of do what he wants there. And we know Dean Pease is sort of like averse to playing rookies. Like last year, Richie Grant barely played, and then this year he's playing a lot. So it's like, I think Troy Anderson is playing a reasonable amount. I don't think that he's been so good or bad or whatever that you really question how much he's playing. The one position that I question probably is like D'Angelo Malone. I feel like should be playing a lot more versus someone like Ogundeji, who I think has been very bad this year. So that's the one I have more of a question than anything. But yeah, I have faith in Smith still to make personnel decisions, especially if they don't go to Ritter after the bye, then I think we have another discussion to have there, but it sounds like they will do that. But yeah, Alan, we talked about the defense a little bit. Anything else you wanted to get to on the defensive side?
Oh, what'd you make with what I thought was the AJ Terrell clean forced fumble, but then they ruled it incomplete? What'd you make of that?
Yeah, that was a forced fumble. That was a great play. Just Falcons got hosed on that one. Maybe it doesn't matter because they didn't they did end up getting that yardage back and getting into the red zone and getting inside the 10, and then they just blew it with penalties. So it's like maybe it wouldn't have mattered that much. Could have saved them some time, I guess.
Oh, yeah, 15-play drive.
That's
a significant amount.
Yeah, so it could have been significant. And the Falcons got hosed on multiple plays. I think London was interfered with in the end zone on that same series as well. I don't think the officiating was particularly good in this one, but I hesitate to blame them too much because it's like, well, the Falcons basically were in the tank for 3 quarters and then they finally got it together a bit late. So I feel like, you just play better on offense is basically what I'm asking. And then you don't have to depend on the officials to make every single call correctly for you to win games. Because that's their margin of victory right now is so narrow. Like they need every single thing correctly called or they're going to be in trouble.
That's the motto. Just play better.
Just play better. That's the answer usually to most problems. Unfortunately, it's easier said than done.
I was just surprised by it because it just seemed like it was such a clean catch. Yeah. And then he made his move and it was just like, all right, this was like a standard catch and fumble. And then next thing you know it, and the replay was awkward. So
I hate when they reverse the field call too, when there's not really any convincing evidence to the contrary. It's like, now you're just hosing your on-field officials as well. You're like, actually, you guys were wrong about your call. Like, and like, if it's like obvious, then of course you should reverse it. But like those ones that are really close, they really shouldn't go against the officials unless it's clear and obvious that it was different, in my opinion. But I don't know. I'm obviously biased on that call, so that.
No, but I think a lot of people would agree with you. Like, it really seemed like a fumble, but at this point, what more can you say about it? It was just, I don't know, just throughout the game, you just saw a couple, because like the Falcons, which is one of the more fascinating things about them, like they're the least penalized team in the league, so they don't really beat themselves. But I just feel like in this game, and this kind of goes into the offense, it's just whether it was through play calling, clock management, or just some careless blocking, like they did beat themselves in a lot of ways.
Yeah, they did. And really offensively is the issue here. Like we talked about the defense. The defense, it was a tough watch. The tackling was atrocious, but they held them to 19 points. They really sort of buckled down and got stops in the red area when they absolutely had to have stops. And like they deserve credit for that. I'm not gonna like praise them because you watch that tape and you're gonna be like, wow, goddamn, this was a bad day by the defense. But like you only allowed 19 points. You managed to keep it within contention. You managed to keep it from getting out of hand despite the offense quite literally shitting the bed the entire first half and playing a very poor game up until late in this one. And you kept it. You're on the field the whole game. The Steelers had like a 8-minute advantage in time of possession or something by the end of this one. So the defense did what they needed to do to keep this in contention. And that's all we should expect of the defense this season. Maybe next year if we get a significant talent infusion and cash infusion into that side of the ball, we could expect them to carry the load more. But right now, like, you should not expect this defense to do anything more than keep it close because it's up to the offense to win this thing. That's where the investments have come in the draft and in free agency for the most part. And the offense needed to carry this one, and they did not today. They had opportunities to at least get a lead in this one, and they did not. They blew it at the end, obviously, on that last drive with the penalties. And then Mariota throws the pick, on what should have been a potential game-tying drive at least. It would have been a tough one. That was a terrific punt by the Steelers on that final possession. I mean, just tat tip on that one. I mean, that was perfect. But you don't have to throw the pick on the next play either. Like, that was just a very bad decision by Mariota. I know his hand was hit as he was throwing, but he threw that in a triple coverage. So, I mean, it's like the safety, it was already double and the safety was coming over. It was just a very obvious throw. So I do blame Mariota for that. But where do we start on offense? I mean, is it really Mariota? Because it's like early on, the running game struggled a bit, but I feel like on a per carry basis, the running game was doing fine. They just were oddly pass heavy in the first half.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just because they got into like it was a first down inefficiency, or they got into a lot of third long situations, or penalties a couple times affected them. But it just didn't seem to be much of a rhythm. But then you saw third, fourth quarter, like they were heavily dependent on the run game, and they were pounding them. Like I thought Chris Lindstrom, oh my god, he had like 4 blocks in the second half. It was just like wow, he's opened things up. And Gary had a decent game, and I know Parker Esty had one bad holding penalty, but he still had that impact.
Yeah.
And the guys you expect that have been doing relatively well to great this year deliver, but then you have Drew Dahlman getting manhandled 3 yards right into Cordell Patterson's lap on one play, and then you have Kobe Gossett can't recognize what a stun is. It's just, yeah, that interior is another conversation, but like they just, whether it's mid-round picks or just veterans that are on like 1-year deals. I don't think Elijah Wilkinson's bad, but I don't think he's the long-term solution. I just think Falcons have a lot of issues, but if they're gonna invest in somewhere, like interior line's got to be there. Like it's just, they need at least one more big time investment, whether it's a center or a guard. Like can't just be solely dependent on Chris Lindstrom because it's a real liability.
Yeah, it is, and obviously we love Chris Lindstrom, one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL. His development has been outstanding. Caleb McGary, to his credit, I think has really improved. I mean, he shut down TJ Watt today, so big props to Caleb McGary for more or less keeping TJ Watt in check. I mean, obviously there were some pressures still, but I think for the most part, he did as well as you could expect a tackle to do against TJ Watt.
He probably got some chip help too, but like the fact that TJ Watt really had no impact as a pass rusher.
Yeah, so
very surprising.
Props for sure. And as a run blocker, he's been fantastic all year. The pass blocking has been a little bit more hit or miss, but I think on the whole it's been better. So he does deserve credit for that. And I think Jake Matthews is playing fine to the point where you just ride it out with him. Like I don't think he's like a top 5 left tackle anymore, but I think he's still top 10, probably closer to 10 than 1. But that's absolutely fine, and I think you roll with that, and he's not going to cause you problems. Like, every once in a while he'll give up a play, but this on a play-to-play basis, Jake Matthews is not causing you problems. So, really, it's left guard, and Gussett's been okay, but it's, for a backup guard, I think Gussett's been okay. Like, I would be fine keeping him around as a backup guard, but Drew Dahlman, I think you have to get an upgrade there. I think he's clearly the weakest link on the offensive line, and the fact that he's still the weakest link with a backup in at left guard is really telling. And like, I'm fine if they want to re-sign Elijah Wilkinson to a small deal for another year or two as like a sort of a let's see if he can improve, because I think he was really starting to hit his stride before he got hurt. I thought he was having some of his best games. I also don't think you have to have an elite left guard, and like, as long as he can pass protect at like an average-ish level and run block at an average-ish or better level, like, you don't have to have elite offensive linemen at every spot. It's really hard to do that. So
yeah, no one could do it.
So I think he's fine. I certainly wouldn't mind like continuing to try to get better there, but I think considering your resources and all these other things, like, you're probably not going to be able to get a huge upgrade. So I think you keep Wilkinson around and you really try to go hard at upgrading the center position, and then you have to figure out what you're doing at right tackle. But, so far this year, I think McGary has earned an extension. It really depends on the dollars for me, like, as to whether it's him or someone like Jawan Taylor or like a Jack Conklin, like if McGary's looking for like premium 18 million tackle dollars, like, I don't think it's worth it. But if he's looking for like 12, 10, I think that's perfectly reasonable. So we'll have to see there, because I think the other side of the coin is like where the Falcons are picking, which I believe is 12 now after the loss. You're in position to get a top tackle in the draft. And if you're talking about 18 million for Caleb McGary for 3-4 years versus a top tackle prospect where you're probably looking at one of the top 3 tackles, I think you go with the top 3 tackle in the draft and save that money and spend it elsewhere, and not tie yourself to a guy who had his only, I would say, above average year in his contract year, because the Falcons have been burned by that before with like Sam Baker and things like that. And it's really about, I guess, the dollar amount of that extension. But yeah, I agree with you. Like, the offensive line, It's been surprising to me how good they've been considering how few like actual upgrades there were. It's basically like Elijah Wilkinson came in and they switched out Drew Dahlman. And I think center has more or less been about the same as last year. But everywhere else they've been playing better, so that is a nice change.
Yeah, especially with McGary. I think McGary has like made the difference in turning the offense line from being really below average to average to fairly decent. I just think, given how much a liability in pass protection was over the past few years, just really had a negative impact on the offensive line because a lot of edge rushers, the top ones, they line up now on the left side. So like him having that responsibility, it was a problem over the years. So now I think whether it's Arthur Smith using better formations to help him out a bit, but also just his general improvement, like you see it like every week, like edge rushers aren't exploding past him as much. They're not bending around him as much. Like he just seems to be better technical wise, and he's not getting blown past the line of scrimmage. That was one of the biggest issues of McGary. I don't know if you've like seen over the years, but it just seems like he has these snaps where he doesn't even get a hand on the edge rusher and the quarterback has no chance. So I just think he's more dialed in now. And he's always been a fairly good run blocker too. So the fact that he's not a total liability as a pass protector while making a real impact as a run blocker, he's gonna have a market. It's gonna be interesting what kind of market it is.
Yeah, that's of course a good. That it's just I don't know what he's going to be asking for, and if he's asking for like premium tackle money, and maybe someone would give it to him. Like I'm not on.
There are organizations out there. We know this.
Yes, it's just like he's had a good year, but I think you have to be really wary of guys that only turn it on in contract years. Like so many teams have been burned by that, and it's like when you're in position to get a top tackle in the draft, I think you go that route. But, what do I know? I'm just an internet GM, so we'll see how the Falcons play it. And they certainly have the money to do it if they want to. But I wouldn't necessarily back up the truck for him, if we're being completely honest. But I think he's earned a contract extension. Just depends on the dollar amount. George Costanza. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to mention, just to go back to the offense, with the offensive line in particular, like it only seemed like they allowed pressure when Pittsburgh like brought 6, which is understandable. But I feel like when the Steelers rushed 4, they didn't have that big of an impact.
Yeah. I think they did a good job, and this offensive line has struggled with the blitz. I think part of that it's Drew Dahlman's not been getting the protections right all the time, but I think they have improved against 4, even if it's a good 4. I think they've handled it a lot better than they did last year, for instance, and that has helped the offense. Of course, they've also been much better at run blocking, which is a significant thing when you're running the ball as often as they do. All right, we got George Costanza with the $1. He says, Falcons fans, it could be worse. We could have traded for Russell Wilson. People were talking about Matt Ryan's contract being bad. One has to ask if the Hainsworth deal is still the worst, considering what they gave up. Future is bright here in Atlanta. So.
That Hainsworth deal, man. Oof, and you just saw like the end of that first year, he was dogging it so bad. It's just like, this is just pure Washington football. I'll say that. But would you agree that the biggest positive coming out of this game was just the fact that we actually got to see Drake London be utilized as the focal point of the passing game?
Yeah. I mean, I think that was a positive thing, and we saw him targeted a lot, like he should be, and I think he stepped up to the plate. He had, I mean, I think some people called one of them a drop, and it was like, well, I think the defender did get his hands on it, so I wouldn't really call it a drop. I recall that. I don't think the placement. I mean, a lot of the throws were just bad, but I think it was one of his best games certainly, and I think we've seen plenty from Drake London to know that he can be this team's wide receiver 1. Like, I don't have any concerns about that. And the same thing with Pitts. Like, even with Matt Ryan on a team with like basically no other weapons last year, we saw Pitts, be one of the best rookie tight ends ever. So like, yes, he had a down year production wise, but I have no concerns about those two being elite pass catchers for this offense. So it's really about the quarterback. And maybe that's where we should go next, unless you want to say anything else about Drake London or the rest.
No, it was good to see him be actually featured. Like it's just been so long, and the fact that he actually was getting targets, he actually made a play downfield. I think it was, like the fact that his longest catch this year, his 38 yards. This goes to show
It's
you the
sad.
state of the Falcons pass game, because you
Sad.
saw his highlight reel in college. Like, he should be doing a lot more. So
Yeah, he was wide open on that one deep shot. Mariota just like completely sailed it. I mean, and he was under pressure, but it's like, how many times have you seen Mahomes getting sacked and hitting this like insane deep bomb for a touchdown? It's like Mariota, like when he's getting sacked, it's like he never hits it. So it
yeah. You
they're
see
obviously
Kirk Cousins
not
do it. Like,
you see Kirk Cousins do it. Yeah.
I'll think of like a more realistic comparison.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I'll say like, yeah, I've seen Kirk Cousins make those kind of throws. It's just fun to us. Like London, he had like a 15-yard comeback, yards of separation, very straightforward completion, and Mariota just completely like airmails it. It's like, where's this ball going? It ends up out of bounds. It's just like he has like yards of separation. Like, how is this possible?
Yeah, so many passes were like that today. It's just so frustrating. Like, just not even catchable. Like, and some of them were like clean pocket. He just like Mariota didn't follow through on the throw, or the mechanics were off. And like, I'm not a QB guru, so I can't be like, oh, well, he didn't put his pinky toe down, so that's why the ball wasn't on. Like, I'm not that, experienced, so I'll leave that to guys like Joe Schmo in the comments and things like that, for evaluating that. And I know Joe has gotten onto us about not breaking down like the mechanic, really like detailed reasons that Mariota is missing or not missing plays and all that. And Joe, I appreciate your commentary. I really do. I'm trying to work on that stuff this offseason to really get more into that, so I can provide more of that commentary. But at this point, I can't. So bear with me here.
If you see flashes, like I think the one thing is just his footwork. There's times where he just seems to be like in a real panic and he doesn't really step into his throws. So I think that's like always been one of his biggest issues.
Yeah, and it's consistent inconsistency, and I think that's the issue for me, is that if you can't trust your quarterback to make any throw, it's a big problem. And I think the staff is getting fed up with it, and I think the team is getting fed up with it. You could see the frustration on Drake London's face in this one. I'm sure if you're seeing it on game day, this is like, I guarantee you it's happening on the practice field and in the locker room too. Like, we're only seeing one sliver of what's happening. And guys on the field, they know they're on TV. That a lot of them are gonna try to keep their emotions in check and try not to let that stuff spill over. But I think we know what's going on. And look, we'll bring it up again. Arthur Smith, a few weeks ago, when asked about the quarterback change, we're not considering any change. Nothing is going to happen. We've never considered it. Today, immediately after the game, all options are on the table. To me, that means that a change is coming. What do you think about that, Alan?
Yeah, totally agree. When you use that type of verbiage, the way he articulated himself just gives you that sign. And yeah, I thought the breaking point was the Cincinnati game. Like, I just thought, oh man, it's clear like this team cannot put together a cohesive pass game with Mariota at quarterback, because it's just the misses are so glaring. And then if you're so dependent on play action too, like there's no drop back game. It's just like, I think we just seen it week after week. It just isn't, like you said, consistent. But now it just gets to the point where Mario like can't make the standard throws, like the bucket, the layups. Like Drake London should be doing a lot better. Yeah, a lot of days the key shouldn't have to be catching an off-target throw every single time. Like, it just seems like Mariota, he never really hits his guys in strides, and when it comes to deep ball accuracy, forget about it. It's like a never-ending roller coaster. It's just you don't know where it's going. Like, it just, the ball goes in the air and it's just like, all right, he might be on point, and then it ends up going out of bounds. It's just like, why? So look, they ran the option. They'll do a couple other creative things when it comes to utilizing as a carrier, but at this point, it's just, you got to be able to hit the layups. You got to be able to hit some standard throws, and he's just not doing it. And it's like, we're playing this guy over a rookie that had a great preseason. Like, the time is now. Time was really now 3-4 weeks ago, but now it's real now.
Yeah, and I think the staff wanted to give Ritter as much time as possible to get comfortable, to learn the playbook. They really didn't want to force him out there, because you look at the difference between the Falcons and the Steelers. Like, this is a great example of two teams that are basically the same team. Both teams are rebuilding after moving on from longtime veteran starters. Like, the Falcons traded Matt Ryan, Ben Roethlisberger retired. So what did the Steelers do? They go out and sign Mitch Trubisky, who, to be fair, Trubisky was like one of the biggest free agent quarterback signings. Like, yeah, he was actually like pursued by multiple teams, and there was like a question of where he was going to go. I think he got paid a significant amount of money too.
It was 2 years, 14 million.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
something significant there. So not that. I mean, it was basically the same contract as Mariota, but I think with Mariota, more of it was backloaded into the second year as more of like a team option. I do want to look that up because I'm just curious in terms of the money. But like,
that's a good question.
basically, we saw them do that and then draft a rookie in this draft class. So yeah, it was 2 years. It was actually very similar to Mariota's contract. And yeah, it's actually smaller than Mariota's contract, I think. 2 years, 14 million, and only 3.6 million in 2022, and very little guaranteed money in 2023. So yeah, it's easy to get out of. But so they draft Kenny Pickett in the first round. The Falcons sign Marcus Mariota after trading Ryan, and they draft Desmond Ritter in the third round. These two teams couldn't have had much of a different strategy than they have. The Steelers turned to Pickett in week 4, like during the game. Obviously, he hasn't played great up until the last couple games, but they've gotten him a ton of experience. The Falcons stuck with Mariota basically the entire time and are only now potentially going to go to Ritter with a few games left, and both have the exact same record, pretty similar in terms of their scoring and defensive play and all this stuff. So it's sort of like, who did it better and what's the better strategy? Because they sort of threw Pickett out there and he didn't exactly have a great start to his season, but now he's got all these games under his belt. It seems like he's finally starting to get a little more comfortable. Meanwhile, the Falcons stuck with Mariota in the hopes that they could maybe sneak into the playoffs, and now that has sort of died, and it's like, well, maybe we're only going to see Ritter for a few games now. So it's sort of like two teams in the exact same spot with different strategies, and I wonder which one will actually end up working out in the long run better. But right now, I'd rather be the Steelers. I mean, I'd also rather have TJ Watt, but
Yeah, they have the better roster.
Yeah,
when you have a roster of him, obviously Micah Fitzpatrick, I think Anthony Highsmith's coming on, Cameron Hayward, as old he is, still stud. So like, there's a reason why Pittsburgh's defense has been top 5 these past couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny because this year has been the first time in a long time that they've been a bad defense, and they didn't look that bad against the Falcons today, certainly, but they still stopped the run well, and they did that in the first half. Of course, the Falcons, they can never be completely stopped on the ground, and they did have a really strong second half running the football. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, like I said, like Steelers turned to their rookie very early. The Falcons still have not, probably will be now, but I mean, what do you think about that and the difference in how these two seasons have gone? Because the Steelers had a really awful start. I think they were like 1-6 at one point. Yeah. Now 5-8 have caught the Falcons, where the Falcons have they had a strong start and they were at 500, and now they've fallen to 5-8 after 3-4 pretty bad offensive games in a row. So it's just like different trajectories they've now met, and it's like, I would rather be the Steelers going forward. Like, that team looks like it's going in the right direction as the Falcons continue to get worse and worse on offense. So, but what do you think about that?
Yeah, they're obviously going different directions. I just think the Falcons, we got to wait till 2023 just because the whole cap situation. That's another thing you really have to keep in mind. Like, this team's going to have so much to spend. And it's not like they have resources. Like I said, like, you look at a couple of the blue chip players they have, they do possess that. So not all hope is lost there. I think a lot of the criticism stems from the coaching staff because they came in with big backgrounds, like Arthur Smith, one of the most credentialed play callers, someone that really elevated Tennessee. Dean Pease, look at his resume. So I think the fact that we've seen some glaring coaching errors, I do think Arthur Smith's done a good job, and I do think he is a long-term fit. It's just I just maybe expect more, especially from the passing game, because creating those chunk plays. I know you're dependent on play action. Don't get me wrong, which is a good thing. But it's just I expected more chunk plays to be produced, and it seems like these completions, a lot of them, it's such a challenge.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem is like Mario doesn't hit any passes well, like even the short stuff. Like, it's one thing if it's like, oh, you're just an elite short pass quarterback, you can design an offense around that to some extent. Maybe it's like, oh, you're great at the intermediate stuff, or you're really dangerous downfield. Like, but it's like Mariota, the thing with Mariota, and that's how I like to phrase it, is like Mariota can make every throw and he can miss every throw. Like, and it seems like completely every single play could be different. So you can't design an offense around that. You can't sculpt your scheme. I mean, I guess he's worse throwing deep, so that's something maybe you try to work on. But it's like you can't really even design a scheme around his passing because like it's completely scattershot. Like intermediate, short, doesn't matter. Like he's just as likely to hit it as he is to miss it every single throw. So it makes it really difficult to plan an offense. I guess the hope with Ritter is like maybe he's more like you can scheme an offense around him more easily. But I also think Ritter is closer to the archetype that Arthur Smith likes. Like you look at Ryan Tannehill, athletic quarterback, but very much a pass-first quarterback. And they love to use Tannehill in the red zone and run him, and occasionally they'll have him run, and pick up some yards with his legs because he's fast, but he's not a guy that's like really carrying the ball at a high volume, but he's really lethal on those deep play action shots, and he's pretty accurate to all areas of the field and a better passer. Mariota is more of the dual threat where you want him running and passing at about the same rate, but his passing is definitely more limited. Ritter is much closer to Tannehill, and in fact, at the Senior Bowl, it was funny, like when he was asked at his press conference, it was somebody else that asked him, who do you model your game after? He was like, he said a couple of names, and he also said specifically Ryan Tannehill, and it was like, oh, this guy's trying to get drafted by the Falcons, but like that's, I think he can be even better than Ryan Tannehill. I think he's more athletic. He's really fast. I don't think he's ever been a great like runner on a per carry basis, but he has the speed to be really dangerous if teams sort of forget about him. And I think in the red zone, he's capable of doing stuff there. But I do wonder if like that's actually more like they've done a good job of scheming ways for Mariota to make plays with his legs, but you almost wonder if like this running game is so good with all these running backs, like did they really need the quarterback to be carrying the ball this much? Like wouldn't they just rather have a quarterback that could throw? Yeah,
sure. I think it's just more of like a diversion or just mixing things up because I do think they have a pretty a high conversion rate when it comes to using Mariota. Like look at the 49ers game.
Yeah.
I think the first Panthers game, like they've been able to outsmart defenses, good defense too, and pick up those 8 to 10 yards.
Yeah. And I do wonder if it's like Mariota, he's like too much of a threat as a runner to where teams are really like watching him more. Whereas someone like a Ritter Tannehill, they run the ball like sometimes, but they don't run enough that it's like really part of your defensive install that you're like trying to like really scheme that up. And it's like, because of that, maybe Mariota is getting more attention. And, the other side of that is like, look, he just doesn't throw the ball well. So the teams can sell out more to stop the run against Atlanta because they just don't fear the passing game. And
exactly. And that's why I think Pittsburgh did, especially when it came to blitzing in particular. Yeah. Like you saw those 5-6 man rushes just because you could take those chances because it's like, it's highly, highly unlikely you're going to allow a 30-40 yard play down the, unless Eli Apple misses his assignment and he didn't take the right step. Like when have you really seen plays over 40 yards this year for the Falcons through the air?
Yeah, I agree. And so it's like, I think the hope with Ritter is that, and I think we're both, expecting that to be what happens after the bye. I think Arthur Smith's comments, they've made it clear without making it clear, basically. Like when you're saying we're not considering it, we've never considered it, to like everything's on the table. That's low key, like we're changing quarterback. Like they're gonna do it. And if they don't, they're not going to. Like, I don't know what else you're waiting for at this point. Like, I don't know. So I'm not even gonna entertain the thought that they're not changing quarterback because it doesn't make any sense. And it's not even like, it's not anything necessarily like that, oh, Mario has been so much worse now, but it really is like the season's over for all intents and purposes of making the playoffs. Maybe some crazy string of events happens where the Bucs fall apart and the Saints fall apart and the Panthers keep sucking and you walk into the playoffs with like 7 wins. But at this point, like you don't build your game plan around that anymore. You should change what you're doing now to evaluation and focusing on the future. That doesn't mean you're tanking for a draft pick or trying to lose. I think you still go out every week trying to win and trying to win as many games as you can. You can still get a winning record if you go on a run. But I think you need to do that with Desmond Ritter at the helm because we need to see him. Like, he needs to get... I don't think he needed to get, like, 16 games this year, but 4 would be nice, and he's going to get a chance to play 2 division opponents. That's going to be valuable experience going to New Orleans. I mean, that's a really tough game to make your first start in. It's also a potential this is where legends are made situation. Like if he goes into New Orleans, beats the team's most hated rival in his first start, that's like a legendary beginning for a young quarterback in Atlanta. It's like, oh yeah, you went into New Orleans and beat our most hated enemy. That's setting yourself up. And if you lose, it's like, oh, that was a really tough place to go play. So it's really a win-win, So maybe there's a little bit of politicking going on there, little subterfuge, little gamesmanship by the Falcons about organizing that first start. But I think you just need to know, like at this point, we need to see what he offers. And I mean, see how ready he is. Like, he's going to get a full spread of teams. He's going to get to play 2 division opponents, like I said. He's going to get to play the Cardinals, who have actually had a pretty decent defense this year. And then he's going to get to play the Ravens.
Van Joseph's been doing a good job.
Yeah, and then the Ravens, who, unfortunately, Lamar got hurt today. We don't know the severity of that injury. Maybe he plays, maybe he doesn't. But that defense is tough to play against as well. So there's a good spread of opponents. I don't think it's too brutal. I think there's some winnable games in there, but like at the end of the day, we need to know, like, does he have chemistry with Drake London? Does he have chemistry with Zacchaeus? Can he hit these guys? How does he look? Does he make a bunch of mistakes? How does he look running the football? Like all that stuff. Like this is now time, like Ritter, show us what you got, because if you play well enough, you're probably going to go into 2023 as the starter with a veteran backup. And if you really struggle, then it's like, okay, we have to go all out to try to find somebody else. And right now, I think you and I have no idea what 2023's plan is. So it's difficult. But I think these 4 games could go a long way in at least telling us something about what we should expect next season.
Because it does give the coaching staff a real good look, at least, of the film and just how does he handle the pre-snap coverages. Like, at least he's getting these 4 games where these are going to be competitive opponents. Like, they're not playing the Texans or anything. It's like, okay, these are some tests, especially some road games, regardless of the Falcons Saints current record. Like, those games are always going to be intense. New Orleans crowd's going to be up for it. So being able to see Ritter in that environment, I think, is going to be very beneficial just for long-term prospects, because look, you can't keep doing the same thing over and over with the same results when clearly it's not good enough. So like, it's been a long time coming. Now just a matter of Ritter have every snap. It's just making sure, because in the preseason I think he struggled a little bit, not with ball security, but maybe there's a couple of delayed games here and there. So I think it's just a matter of him of getting into a rhythm, understanding how fast-paced things are, and just kind of being able to handle pressure, because this offensive line is still going to allow pressure. But at least Ritter, whether it's having a quicker, more accurate release, or if he's actually going to use his legs more, I think that's going to be something to watch for.
Yeah. So I think it could be an interesting final 4 games. Obviously, we have the bye week coming up. And then we've got, those last 4 games to look forward to. And the Falcons are in a weird spot because at 5-8, they're picking in the low teens, but because of their strength of schedule being like one of the lowest in the NFL, like I don't think they're going to lose out. I still think they're going to win 6 or 7 games by the time the dust clears, but if they were to lose out, it's not out of the question that they could be picking 5th, 6th. I mean,
absolutely.
Because their tiebreaker is going to put them at the top of whoever they're tied with, more than likely. It's not out of the question this team could still find themselves in the top 10. Conversely, if they do win out, with if Ritter comes in and wins 4 straight games, maybe they do make a run for the playoffs, because that would mean they beat 2 division opponents, including the Bucs, and anything can happen. But I think coming off losing 3 of the last 4 of the last 5, whatever it is. I
think 4 out of the last 5.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So expecting them to win 4 straight games now is basically almost a statistical impossibility. Their chances of making the playoffs at this point are like 6%. So making the playoffs should no longer really be something they should try. Like, they should try to win every game, but I think going into it with like, oh, we're going to make the playoffs or we have a real chance to do this, is like doing yourself a disservice and setting yourself up for failure. Like, you should get your young guys on the field, most notably Desmond Ritter. And then if magic happens, terrific. Like, if Desmond Ritter wins 4 straight games and you're in the playoffs, like, you count your blessings. But you need to get him in there. And then, of course, if Desmond Ritter does do that, there's going to be all the complaints of like, well, why didn't this guy start earlier? Or if he does win 4 games and they still miss the playoffs, it's like, well, why wasn't he starting weeks ago? We could have actually made the play. So there's still, plenty of opportunity for things to be controversial.
There's just no satisfaction.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah.
But look, the coaching staff's going to be held have to be held culpable, because I really think a lot of coaching staffs after that Carolina game would have made a move. Look at Robert Saleh with Zach Wilson.
Yeah.
Like,
he was the number 2 overall pick too. So,
yeah. It's clear our offense is just not functioning properly. For a coach that wants to preach about balance, you can't have balance when the passing game just doesn't offer much of a threat, even though they have good skill position players. So I think this move, there's always going to be negativity behind it. I just think, from a fan standpoint, it's like, let's just be excited about the last 4 games from a team building standpoint for 2023. Look, Arthur Smith's going to hopefully learn from his mistakes. I think he was just a little too stubborn in this one, but I think as a play caller, and I think the locker room's still very much behind him. So be hopeful, Arthur Smith. Like, let's lose this fire Arthur Smith hashtag or wherever we want to phrase. Like, it's not going to happen, and I think he's done enough with a very below average roster to make sure they've been competitive these last 2 years.
Yeah, I agree. And we'll have to see. We'll have to see exactly what happens over the final 4 games. I think it could be exciting. Hopefully, I hope we see some good things from Ritter, because I think on the whole, we should probably expect some mistakes. But
yes,
I don't think it would be that hard to be more impressive as a passer than Mariota by the same token. So like, it's not like he's actually walking into a situation where he just sort of has to be like a solid to good passer, and everyone will be celebrating. So, that maybe will make it a little easier for him. And then it's also not the worst outcome in the world if the Falcons were to lose, 2 or 3 of these last games, because again, it's going to help your draft situation. And if you're not making the playoffs, then it's okay. Like, you can focus on your draft pick. No one's suggesting that they intentionally lose games, but if you see Ritter make some strides, win a few games, and you end up with a top 10 pick, and you're confident or feeling at least decent about Ritter going into 2023 as a starter, then I think you chalk it up as a win for the end of the season.
Exactly.
At this point. So, we will see there. I do want to get to one final donation here from Andre Fuller. Thank you, Andre. Appreciate that, man. He says, Terry must spend money on depth and pass rush this year while drafting the trenches in those first 3 picks. Teams will never fear us if we don't have scary dudes there on both sides of the ball. Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you look at my most recent mock draft, it was trench pick, the first 3 picks. Like, and I don't think they necessarily have to do that. I think I like ruffled a lot of feathers by saying like, well, I don't like right now. I would say like if they drafted Bijan Robinson like today, that I would be pissed because the trenches have not been addressed. But I also said like, hey, we could look at this in 2 months, and they've spent tons of money, brought in, multiple defensive linemen and multiple offensive linemen. Then if you want to talk to me about Bijan Robinson being BPA or whatever, sure. But like today, it's irresponsible to make that pick, but it could change. But yes, I think right now, like, we have to see the trench investments, because I don't care if you bring in Saquon and Kenneth Walker and a million running backs. Like, the running back room is great. Like, I think the running back room is fantastic. Like, they honestly can't run the ball enough right now to give carries to all these guys. Like, Caleb Huntley's been great. Tyler Algiers really, I think, improved over the course of the season. We know what Cordarrelle Patterson offers. We don't even, like, they're not even bringing Damian Williams back off IR because everything's fine. Yeah. There's no room. Like, and even Avery Williams, like, when he did have to carry the ball, like, he was efficient. Like, I mean, he's not a tremendous running back in terms of, like, volume, but, like, as a change of pace guy, I mean, even he was making plays. So, I view running back as basically, like, a complete luxury at this point. Like, sure, would it be nice to have Bijan Robinson? It's like, yeah, I think Bijan Robinson's a great player. And I think if you want to make a case for that pick, we could talk about that this offseason as being BPA. And, I've been on record as saying, like, well, he's such a good receiver. Maybe you sort of make him a running back wide receiver hybrid. And if that sounds like Cordarrelle Patterson, but, like 10 years younger, then, that's, maybe that is what that is. But, I think it's a little aggressive, but all that to say, trenches are the most important thing. Trenches are where we're basically completely bereft of talent, and I think if they were to just go another skill position player without adequately addressing those positions, it would really upset me. So I'm on the same page as you, Andre Fuller. But yeah, anything else you want to touch on, Alan? We covered a lot of ground on today's show, and we'll cover more next week during the bye. But
I think what's good is fun because look, we've been talking about the trenches for years, and you look at some of these championship teams. Even when like the last time the Falcons were contenders back in 2017, you looked at those Eagles teams, the Rams teams, and then now current day, look at a team like Dallas. It's just look. I'm not saying you got to like spend over $100 million directed towards the trenches, but just like you see the most successful teams in the league, they have one or two guys that could wreck a play at any time. And yes, Falcons have to have a great Jared, but he's getting up there. And then with the offense line, they got blue chip player Lindstrom, and then Matthews is a little bit on the decline, though he's still, I think, pretty solid. So I just think, man, when you have those guys in the trenches, whether it be on the offense or defense side of the ball, it adds so much. Like, when it comes to protecting your quarterback, then getting after quarterback, and then shutting those running lanes, but then creating lanes, it's just, and you've seen how this team, they try to make up for it when it comes to running play action and using more condensed formations and chipping as much as possible. But when you have those five guys that you can really depend on, it will make being a quarterback much easier with those cleaner pockets. And I think as a play caller, you could at least take more shots downfield. You don't have to be so cautious. You don't have to keep running like 5 to 6 screens a game. I think the Falcons should be doing more screens. It's just I think having more solidified offensive line, defense line, it just gives coaches more opportunity to be fearless and unpredictable. So hopefully that's the focus.
Yeah, I think it should be, and I think this is a good draft to be picking in that like 15 to like top 15 range. Like there's a lot of good players. I do think the late first gets a little bit thinner in terms of guys. It's like this is probably a lot of sort of early second round guys here. But that top 15, I think, is chock full of really good players. There's a lot of good offensive tackles. That's why I've been on record as saying, like, if I had to put money on it, I think they just take an offensive tackle because I think there will be a good one no matter where they're picking. We know there's a couple of blue chip defensive linemen. Obviously Will Anderson, but I sincerely doubt they will have any chance at Will Anderson unless they lose out. Same thing with Jalen Carter. But Miles Murphy, Brian Brzee, if they're in the top 10, they'll have a shot at those guys. They have some very, very good cornerbacks, like to potentially consider. I that again is more of like something that I would rather not consider that high, but it's, I wouldn't be opposed to it if it's really the best player available. But, I think if they're picking in that like 5 to 10 range, I think there's a chance that you're looking, at taking like a Brian Brzee there. I really do like Isaiah Foskey from Notre Dame. I know that, he just set the Notre Dame sack record and prototypical guy, and I know he was more of like I feel like a late first, but I think he's really turned it on lately. 2 years of 10 or more sacks back to back, and I'm never gonna say no to good edge players either, so that they know how.
No one should.
No one should. So they need it, but like you said, I think they've done some commendable things with their limited resources. And I think Fontenot has managed to hit on these late picks. I think, Ogundeji, I think, is the one I'm sort of sour on. And that's like, we're talking about like a 5th, 6th round pick. So I'm not like mad at Fontenot for making the pick. It's like, that one hasn't really turned out. But like Taquan Graham was playing like a quality rotational guy up until his injury. They managed to find Abdullah Anderson, who I think is someone that we can potentially rely on as like our 5th defensive tackle. I think he's a guy you're happy with as your 5th defensive tackle. And, Ebiketie, I think, was really starting to heat up. And he had a lot of pressures. I think he was finally starting to get there. Malone, I think, has potential. Richie Grant is having a better season. Darren Hall is making some plays looking like he can be a starter on the outside potentially. Like it's starting to come together. They've found these contributors. Now they just need to add the star guys. They need the top guys to take this defense to being something really respectable, especially in the trenches. And just right now they don't have that. So they have a lot of money and they should have some more premium picks to spend. So we need to see it now. But I think, so far I have confidence that they're going to draft good players, and now we get to see like what does Fontenot do with a giant purse to spend, essentially. Like, how does he attack it? And I think it's going to be very exciting. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how that transpires because we haven't really seen him have an opportunity to do that yet. So it's exciting times. Like I think this is. I hesitate to call this a disappointing season. I mean, I think this is about what we expected.
Yeah.
So I really don't think it's a disappointing season. I think I was hoping to see Ritter earlier, but I think they've won some games. They've been competitive. I would say this team has been better than last year, even though they might finish with a worse record, which is exactly what I predicted in my season predictions. And I think, we've seen enough to be confident that this team, with a full salary cap to work with and not 60% of it, and another draft class, and hopefully a better quarterback under center, like it's starting to come together. And as much as people are frustrated with Arthur Smith and the coaching staff and some blunders here and there, like the offensive line, I don't take it lightly that this offensive line with a lot of these same players was really bad when Arthur Smith came in, and now after a year with him and Dwayne Ledford here, pretty much everyone is run blocking well. And I don't discount that. I don't wave that away and say, well, they just instantly got better. Like that is coaching, I think, and that's development. And they've transferred guys who never played these positions before. Elijah Wilkinson barely played left guard in his career. Same thing with Chuma Edoga, who was like a tackle. So I think these guys have they deserve the benefit of the doubt. It hasn't been like tremendous. It hasn't been flashy. Arthur Smith hasn't aced every single decision, but I think he's shown us enough that I feel like, encouraged going into this offseason. So,
as you should, because look, expectations were minimal going into this year. So just finding those pieces, getting those late round gems here and there. But look, we all know this was about a 3-year process given just the complete destruction that Thomas Dimitrov and Dan Quinn left. So
yeah,
let's give it some more time. I know it's a bit deflating given that wonderful start to the year. Things were pretty fun, and now it's like a real lull patch. But look, you got to think of the bigger picture. Like this team's doing what they can. So as much of a downer is today, and who knows how the season's going to end, at least now there seems to be an upward vision when it comes to, okay, now we're really looking at 2023. We tried what we could this year. Now it's just like, okay, it's been buried. Now let's see what Ritter's got, and let's see what our young players can step up.
Yeah, absolutely. We got a lot to look forward to. It's still 4 more games and a bye week, but probably going to transition to more future focused coverage. And I hope they start to evaluate some of these young guys, given Troy Anderson and D'Angelo Malone and, most notably Desmond Ritter, some more run here. Because I think, like we said, there's some pieces here that I think can build on and rely upon in future years. So I'm excited about that. One last donation coming in from Solaire for $5. Thanks, Solaire. He says, just donating to the Kevin Knight Fund. Got nothing to say other than that our fantasy matchup last week was insane. I've never been madder at a loss ever. Felt like a Dragon Ball Z battle. Yeah, that was a sweaty one, Solaire, for sure. That definitely came down to the last few minutes. I hate when you're like praying for another person's player not to do anything and you're just watching the game.
It's a hard feeling.
Yeah, it's tough, but yeah, great game. Definitely a fun one, for me since I won. But I don't envy your sweaty loss either. But yeah, guys, we really appreciate you tuning in tonight. For those of you that are patrons, just a advanced heads up. The next Q&A session, I believe, will be Tuesday night, based on my conversations with Dave, the boss man, who will be attending. So if you're interested in hitting that patron Q&A, you can send us your questions, tune into it live. If you're not yet a patron and you want to take part and get an hour of FaceTime with Dave and I and anyone else who wants to show up, then you can join the Patreon, patreon.com/Falcoholic Live. A lot of fun there, a lot of exclusive stuff. So you can check that out. Also, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And if you're listening to the podcast audio, leave us a 5-star review. We appreciate that. Yeah. Also want to thank my co-host. He is Alan Strk, at Alan Strk on Twitter. Alan, anything you're working on you'd like to let the people know about?
I'm waiting for another press conference on Arthur Smith. Maybe he makes this move sooner rather than later, so I'd hope for content purposes this week. But I'm sure, given how uneventful and lackluster the Steelers game was, I don't think there's going to be too much analysis from it. I think we'll be focusing more on bigger picture, because what can you really take away from this game? Yes, we have to do our due diligence to covering it, but Now it's, within a day or two, it's just like, all right, the people want to know what's the future going to be like. So I think that's where my head is at. And of course, we got the bye week coming up, so which is a long time coming.
Yeah, I hate this late bye. Like, it's so ridiculously late. Just a weird time to have it. Like, if they were having 2 bye weeks, which I think eventually they probably will do, then it makes more sense to have it this late. But yeah, as it is now, it's like, if we had this bye 2 weeks ago, I think we would have had Ritter start then. But it's just like, since it was so late, it really set things up to be meh.
And I think it's just them in Washington. Off the top of my head, I don't think anyone else has a bye. So, man, like, I can understand them wanting to punish Dan Snyder and that organization. But what did the Falcons
what did we do to deserve this? Yeah,
come on.
We didn't even complete the Deshaun Watson trade, so they shouldn't be mad at us. We tried, but
I didn't want to mention it. You mentioned it. I was like,
yeah. I get we didn't actually complete the trade though, so they got the wrong team. So, but yeah, guys, definitely check out Alan's stuff, and we're gonna have plenty of content this week as well. And guys, I'm Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin. You can check out all my stuff on thefalcoholic.com, where we've got a bunch of tremendous guys, including our newest writer, Jordan Watkins, joining us. I actually don't know his Twitter handle right offhand. I'm going to look it up real quick. But he's coming in. I know he's going to have some terrific stuff. I believe his Twitter handle is at Big75Fella. He has a lot of experience with defensive and offensive line play. He's going to work on that. So check out his stuff coming soon as well. Give him a follow. And yeah, guys, we're just going to keep going. It'll probably be a little bit of a relaxed week. It is the bye week. We all try to relax a little bit. But, I'm going to start going more into the draft stuff. I'm going to, start watching the Senior Bowl prospects because some of those guys have been announced. And we're going to get going on that. And, of course, free agency as well. So stay tuned for that. But we just really appreciate everyone for hanging out. If you want to donate to the Senior Bowl Fund while the show's off air, like if you're a podcast listener, you can go to streamlabs.com/ I think it's the Falcoholic or Falcoholic Live. Just check it out. Make sure that it shows up when you put the link in. But yeah, you can donate there. You can also go to my Twitter and do something on Venmo. But if you do it on Streamlabs, you can leave a question, and we will be sure to answer any questions that come in while we're offline as well, just on the next show. But we just appreciate that. We appreciate everyone for tuning in. Enduring this Falcons team with us, it has not necessarily been easy this season, or any of the last few seasons, if we're being honest. But you guys make it easier. It helps me certainly to talk through all these emotions after the game instead of having them, all up inside, just bothering me for hours. So I think it's cathartic. What do you think, Alan?
Oh, absolutely. Like we needed this, like ever since 2018. Imagine, because people were joking about Twitter not existing. I was like, oh man, like. So say what you want about Twitter though, but Sundays would be brutal. It would just be like empty without Twitter.
Yeah, I'd just be like yelling at my monitor, and that would be terrible. Like no one would enjoy that, not even me. So
like we could try something we could try something with Discord, but I mean it just wouldn't have the same feeling. So that's why you have to be grateful for all what we have. Our readers, our listeners. It's just that's what helps keep things going, and us having the inspiration to put together this compelling coverage, because it has been very difficult for the past few years. There's no denying that. This isn't a team that's firing all cylinders. They don't have these star players. So it's just a matter of kind of find where we could interest readers or interest listeners and just get people engaged, because it could be a struggle at times, especially when a team's essentially now out of the playoff hunt, or at least within the next week or so. So. And at least now that we have, what listeners, what we could think about, and just, seeing those numbers week in, week out, just like, okay, it provides us that extra boost that we need, because look, on-field product is pretty discouraging at the moment. So, and we could talk all what we want about the future, but of course we also want some results. But, the one thing we could count on though is the people. So for that,
it makes it so much better. And we appreciate all of the people who stuck with the show through the Facebook Live days when there was like single digits watching to now when it's regularly 200, 300 plus on game days and over 100 on Wednesday nights. It's really humbling, and we enjoy all the interaction. Leo H says, thanks to Kevin and Alan for the telehealth fan therapy. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. So you guys, give us a lot of enjoyment as well. It's not as much fun to talk to myself about this stuff. Yes. So it's nice to have people listening and appreciating it. So thank you all. But yeah, again, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. If you're listening to the podcast audio, Leave us a 5-star review. We appreciate that. And we will see you guys next time on the Falcoholic Live. That will be Wednesday night at 8. We will be back next week. We'll also have some more pods coming your way. In the meantime, until then, guys, have a great night. Enjoy the rest of your football Sunday. We will see you next time.